What a game week that was. I sold Haaland ahead of his blank, chose Salah as a successful captain pick, bought Bruno Fernandes, Son and Solanke, who got 30 points between them. Make sure you stay tuned throughout this video to see who I'm suggesting this game week. Whilst the green arrow was massive, Flecken still did let me down. Right at the end of the game, Brentford were 1-0 up and Flecken was on 12 points. They went and conceded, it went down to 8 points, then they conceded again and it went down to 4 points, so it dropped by 8 points within the space of just 6 minutes. I know I sound glass half empty because my green arrow went from 1 million to 300k, but still, it could have been a lot better than that with a goalkeeper haul, which is very rare. For now, the fixtures are still looking decent. It's Bournemouth at home, then Everton away, then Leicester at home. I still fancy Flecken to get some points in those matches, albeit it might not be clean sheets, it might be save points like it's been recently. If I was wildcarding this game week, I would still get Flecken. If I had him on his own, he's still got no difficult fixtures for the next 5 game weeks, but I would get Fabianski as well for just 4 mil and rotate him with him, because if you look at the fixtures, they do rotate quite well. And of course, there is risk of Fabianski losing his spot. If he does, like I mentioned earlier, Flecken's fixtures are decent. He can stand on his own 2 feet anyway. Moving on to defence, Trent's got 3 blanks in a row now, and he did only get 2 blanks in the first 7 game weeks. I do think Alisson being sidelined has had an impact on that, because he haven't kept any clean sheets in those matches, and they were keeping one practically every other game before that. But his expected goal involvement has dropped as well. It has only been 0.39 across those 3 matches, which isn't like Trent. He is actually the 3rd most sold defender this game week. That's behind Van der Ven, who's injured, and Konate, who plays for the same team in the same defence, who only played 45 minutes last game week. My advice would be to keep him for the next 2 game weeks. Villa aren't the easiest of opponents, but then it is at Anfield to be fair, and they've got Southampton away next game week. Yeah, it's away from home, but it is a promoted side who do have a very poor attack. In fact, they have scored the least amount of goals in the whole league so far this season, so I think he's worth keeping. And of course, there is that attacking potential. He does provide numbers that are very similar to a midfielder usually. I'm not sure about keeping him after the next 2 game weeks though. It's City at home and then Newcastle away. Everton away in the Merseyside derby might possibly pose a threat like it did last season. Personally, I don't think I'll own him from game week 13 onwards. Next up in defence is Gabriel, and just like Trent, he's been a bit of a wet fart recently. He's had 5 blanks in a row now. I am still going to keep him though. I do think the storm is nearly over for Arsenal. They have had some difficult fixtures recently. It's Chelsea away next, but when that match is over, there's no difficult fixtures for a while from a defensive perspective. Lastly in defence is Gvardiol, who scored another goal. He's got 36 points in the last 5 game weeks, and I really hope he's not ruled out with a bad back, because he's been carrying me over 2 defenders. In all fairness, it's about time he pulled his own weight. He did get 4 blanks in a row before he started getting his returns. That's whilst the other 2 players were returning. And I would say my patience has paid off there. I know what attacking threat he can provide, and he does play for a decent defence as well. Something to consider is that City have the most difficult fixtures from a defensive perspective from this point onwards. Brighton away this game week isn't too bad, but then Spurs at home next game week is a difficult fixture, and Liverpool at Anfield is even more difficult and might actually sell Gvardiol next game week. If you need to buy a defender short term, I think Darlow's completely fine. Obviously it's Leicester at home, Ipswich away, Everton at home. Doesn't get much easier than that for 3 game weeks. Whilst United's defence hasn't been the best, it's not been the worst either, and Darlow does provide attacking threat. I don't think he's bad for the short term, but when it comes to game week 14 onwards, you would probably have to sell him. Going off the fixtures, Aitner is a better long-term option. He also provides a lot of attacking threat. The problem is the Wolves' defence is pretty weak, and if he gets another yellow card, he gets a suspension because he's currently on 4. Apart from that, I can't see any other defenders that specifically stand out this game week. I don't think it's a really good game week to make a defensive transfer. Just a heads up, if Reece James does keep his fitness up this game week, don't be surprised if I suggest him for just 4.9 mil next game week. I'm fully aware of his injury history, but I am a bit of a madman when it comes to chasing the upside. I bet you all thought I was a bit of a madman when I suggested Bruno for the last 3 game weeks, and he come away with 17 points in that time, 10 points last game week, and last game week I needed to make a midfielder transfer. I put my money where my mouth is, I went and bought him, and it's paid off. I am expecting it to pay off over the next 3 game weeks as well. Leicester at home, Ipswich away, and Everton at home. It doesn't get much easier than that. Whilst I only bought him last game week, I have accepted that I'm going to have to sell him ahead of game week 14. Arsenal away, Forest at home, and City away. It doesn't get much more difficult than that from an attacking perspective. Last game week, a lot of people sold Son. I went and bought him. He got an assist, which was nice, but he didn't quite make it to 60 minutes, so he only came away with a 4-pointer. But this game week, he is in the running for captaincy against Ipswich at home. I'm not going to spoil the video. Make sure you watch my best captain video if you've not already. I'm not going to discuss his minutes too much now because I have discussed them on that video. However, I did buy him as a short-term punt just for 2 game weeks. Last game week, I'd say was near enough successful with 4 points. I did expect him to get reduced minutes, but not less than 60. As for this game week, Ipswich at home, that is a very easy fixture. I do think he'll get more minutes than 55, but nowhere near 90. I will probably sell him next game week ahead of City away, and I do think I'll bring in Palmer. That's of course if he's fit to play. I might even possibly wildcard. I'll say that quietly, because I have got a lot of research to do, but there's not many opportunities left to wildcard before we get the next one. Next up in midfield is McNeil. I know what you're going to say, why have you still got an Everton attacker? And he has blanked in his last 2 matches, but to be fair, he got a 15-pointer in game week 6 and a 6-pointer in game week 8. When you add up all the points together, and his price tag was only 5.5 mil when I bought him, that's not bad points per million, and I do think it does take some really difficult circumstances to sell a player when they've got favourable fixtures. It's West Ham away this game week, they don't have the best of defences, so for me, he's going nowhere. Unless I was to wildcard, I do think I will keep him for the next 4 game weeks. It's not only a favourable fixture this game week, Brentford at home next game week's not too bad. Yeah, United away at Old Trafford isn't the best, but Wolves at home the game week after is fine. Of course, I will make sure he's gone before game week 15 when it's Liverpool at home, Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, City away, and then Forest at home. Practically all difficult fixtures from an attacking perspective. I'm predicting that we'll be in the relegation zone after that bad run of matches, and Dyche might be gone. Next up in midfield is Salah. He's in the running for captaincy with Son this game week. Holland also features on the best captain video. I don't own him this game week, but I'd say he's got easier opponents than Salah. Just remember to watch the video after this if you've not already. It's really tight this game week. Not only is he a great option this game week, he is one of the leaders for the captaincy next game week against Southampton away. That is a very favourable fixture. As much as he puts in a good case for captaincy for the next 2 game weeks, I do think I'll sell him for the 2 game weeks after that. It's City at home and Newcastle away. Even if I do think it's optimal to sell him, I will find it difficult because he is the highest scoring player in the game, and that's by 11 points. Lastly, midfield is Mbumo. He did blank last game week, but I let him off because he's got so many points before that, including 15 points the game week before. I've seen his effective ownership is very high, so every point that he scores now doesn't really matter too much. But if you don't own him, I know you've missed a few easy fixtures, but you've not missed the train yet. He's got Bournemouth at home this game week, which isn't too bad. Everton away the game week after. And then his captaincy material against Leicester at home in game week 13. Now, I'm not saying I'm definitely going to captain him, but right now I'd say he's my favourite option that game week. If I was to buy a midfielder this game week, I don't think it's the best of game weeks to do it, but I would probably buy Semenyo. He's only 5.6 mil, and Bournemouth have got favourable fixtures from an attacking perspective for quite a while. Out of all the other midfielders that I don't own, I think Garnacho is a very solid pick. He's got promising underlying stats, and he's pretty cheap as well. Out of the midfielders that I do own, I think it's worth bringing in Bruno for the next few game weeks. I have recommended him for the last few game weeks, and I'm definitely not going to change my mind ahead of his favourable fixtures. On the bench, I've got Matthews, who's practically useless. In the first outfield spot, I've got Harwood Bellis against Wolves away. Now, that is a decent fixture, but of course, that Southampton defence is too weak to be able to start Harwood Bellis. João Pedro's next on the bench. He has got City at home, but I really can't see Leicester keeping a clean sheet against United at Old Trafford. They've got a poor defence as well. Of course, Pedro's the attacker, he's got the higher upside, but I do prefer to put him behind Harwood Bellis with that more difficult fixture and a very high chance of very low minutes. I've still got Calvert-Lewin up front and he's still blanking. He's got West Ham away this game week. It's another favourable fixture from an attacking perspective. He's still currently in my team, but that is something I'm going to have a long hard think about. That's not because he keeps blanking, because of course at some point he's bound to start scoring goals. Bad form doesn't last forever. It's more the fact that Beto comes off the bench and he scores. Yeah, he was offside for his goal last game week, but it was very tight and it is technically 2 goals in 2 game weeks after him coming on as a sub in a very short period of time. Calvert-Lewin should have lost his spot in the team weeks ago. Unfortunately, he's one of Dyche's favourites, so he's kind of kept his spot in the team, but he is a high risk of it now, and I am going to have a long hard think about it. As for the replacement, I am currently considering Cunha. I might have to open my options though. I do need to consider how much money that will leave in the bank because I need to do Son to Parma next game week. So I might bring in Strand Larsen. I will let that sit with me, but make sure you follow me on Twitter because I will put my final team reveal on there. I think the biggest thing for me to think about is whether Calvert-Lewin keeps his spot or not. Obviously, his hold-up play is pretty good. He has a decent indirect impact, but of course, he's not scoring goals. Beto is directly scoring goals. I think his spot up front is finally under threat, even in Dyche's eyes. Completing the puzzle is Solanke. I went and bought him last game week. He scored 2 goals and got an assist. Got a 16-pointer. Do you know what makes it even better? A lot of people fell for the recency bias and sold him after his 2 blanks. And even better than that, I sold Haaland to get him and he blanked. There is a chance that I might sell Solanke next game week, but I've also got the option to bench him for João Pedro. That's after the international break. I'm hoping he'll get enough minutes then, and that would be against Bournemouth away. Now, if I was to bring in a forward that I don't already own, that probably would be Cunha, but given my circumstances, where I need 1 free transfer next game week to shift Son onto Parma, like I mentioned earlier, I don't think I'll be able to do Calvert-Lewin to Cunha. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you found this video informative. Also, make sure you watch my best captain video if you've not already. It's a good one this game week.